If you're a lot like me, you spent a lot of time at KB Toys. And if you're like me, there was a lot of toys you were guaranteed you were gonna see time you walked in. Let's take a look at some of them. KB Toys. Don't you miss it? Don't you miss it? At the time, we didn't realize how good we had it. I had a mall with a KB Toys and a Toys R Us across the street. Anyway, you would walk into this KB and for years you would see the same toys over and over. It seemed like throughout the 90s there was certain toys that was always there. In the 80s there was some toys that was always there. And I figured I'd just pull out some of these toys that you were guaranteed to see time you walked into a KB Toys. Now maybe it's a regional thing. Maybe you're like, I never saw that at my KB. But these I saw. Some of them was always in the 80s. Some were always in the 90s. Maybe the 2000s. It seemed like it took them forever sometimes to change their inventory. So let's start with this. And I'm going to tell you what I saw at every KB Toys. Even when I went out of town, I saw this at KB Toys. That was a manager standing around doing nothing. Seemed like they always had a clipboard in their hand too. I don't know what the deal with that was, but let's look at some other things you were guaranteed to see when you walked into a KB Toys. And let's start with one I know I saw back in the 80s. The drinking crow or drinking bird. I don't know what this is. It would had red liquid in it. I don't know what that was about. And it would just go boop. And it would seem like it was like a cup or something it would drink out of. And it would just boop, boop. My grandma always had these. I don't know why. They was always at my grandma's house. It'd break and then 6 months later it'd turn back up. Maybe she wanted a bingo or something. I'm not really sure. But it seems like I always see these things. Especially back in the 80s. I need to get one. Put it back here. Remember those? I always saw them at KB, usually up by the checkout. And how about this? I know I saw these, especially in the 90s. The dancing flower. I think you played some music next to it and it danced, or maybe it just played music itself and it danced. I don't really remember. Spencer's usually had it, but KB's always had it also. KB Toys always had really loud stuff. They were really big at doing loud stuff. I don't know what the deal with that was. Guess to draw attention. When you're walking around the mall, I don't know. I guess they want to bring a lot of attention to the store being really loud because they had loud stuff. How about this right here? The floating bird. Balance bird. This is another one that I saw probably a lot of times up by the checkout. Now I didn't put batteries on the list, but you always saw a lot of batteries at the store. But this was the bird that you put on the edge of your finger. Maybe you're funny and put it on the edge of your nose. I saw some people do that. I had this. This is one of the things I bought like in the 90s when I first started getting money. I had like a part-time job and I was just wasting money. I bought one of these and it stayed around my house for years. I don't know what happened to it now. And how about this? Atari Jaguar. I saw these things stacked up in the corner of KB Toy on clearance for years. I still don't. I think they just took them out and threw them in the dumpster, to be honest with you. I don't think they ever sold them all. I mean, they were just stacks and stacks of them. It was crazy. I don't know, maybe you had a Jaguar. I don't know. I'm not saying they were good or bad, but I had a bunch of them at KB, and they couldn't get rid of them. How about the talking bird, the parrot that repeats what you say? And it was always you walk in, you could always hear some joker already talked to it, so it was saying something like butt, or ass. He was saying something silly, or most of the time he was just picking up the managers and the co-workers, and it was just like, and the wings would flap. You couldn't even hardly understand what it was saying, though. It was crazy. Remember that? Oh. Let's check back in with that manager and see if she's still standing around.
It'll still play on.
Yes, as I hypothesized, still standing around. How about this? George of the Jungle on a unicycle. They would have usually put this on one side of the store to the other side of the store, and he'd ride a unicycle. Sometimes I saw other monkeys doing it, but I remember Curious George. He'd run back this way and run back this way. It would just go off and off all day. Man, I bet if you worked there, it would drive you crazy. I know it would drive me crazy. But there, I think he had two little things he held to keep him balanced or something. Anybody remember this? Is it just me? Anybody remember this? Well, if you don't remember it, I'm sure you remember this. The singing James Brown. Oh. Now Spencer's at the other end of the mall. They had one of these, but it was Hank Williams Jr. I thought that was kind of cool. But this, it was always so loud. Another loud toy. KP, what was KP? Stop trying to be loud all the time. But yeah, there was always a loud James Brown, I feel good, or whatever he sung. I don't know, that's the way it felt, right? Getting in the hot tub, it's going to make me sweat. I remember that one too. Oof. How about the folding kid chair? I think this is more 80s, but yeah, it seems like I always see folding chairs. I think they changed and went a little bit more plastic in the 90s, so I think they still had chairs. But yeah, the folding chair. I always saw these at KB. Did you? How about, this is another one that's more 90s too, the Razor scooter. Now they had scooters growing up in the 80s, but this Razor scooter was all over the place. And there's always some little punk kid wanting to ride it in the store, and his mom be chasing behind him. Get off there, Toby! Get off of it, Toby! They was always selling these things at KB. They must have owned stock in the Razor company or something, because they always had tons of these, especially at Christmas time. What about this? WCW Truck. Again, this might be just a regional thing, but I can remember an end cap at my KBs, and these things, at least in probably the later part of the 90s and the early 2000s, they sat there for months, years. And then they got shipped away, the toy liquidators. It was just KB, but it was all the clearance stuff. I see these things in clearance bins, on end caps, for years. I'm talking years. Let's look at another here. Baseball cards. I know, I always saw these box of baseball cards at KB. I didn't buy them, but I always like, oh man, you can buy the whole box? I thought it was cool that you could buy the whole box, because I was into buying Batman 89 trading cards, Terminator 2 trading cards. I was into buying trading cards, not baseball. And at KB, you couldn't buy the whole set like this. But a local comic book store you could. I found that out later, but I always see these and think, oh, what if I could buy the whole set of the Terminator cards? So I envied you that collected the baseball cards, and I thought, man, that's a lot of bubble gum. That's a lot of bubble gum. What about this right here? The fishing game. I know your KBs had this. Probably a little rack for a little display in the front, a little cage, put it in there. You could play with it. Kids would come up and want to play with it. Mom and Dad would be shopping. Come on, we got to go. We got to go. Hold on, Mom, got to get the red. Was a little magnet, and you try to catch it. There was usually 3 or 4 missing. There was always 3 or 4 missing. No more, no less. 3 or 4 missing. Maybe the stick was missing the string or broke. The string, the little handle thing was yellow, but it was all dirty, so it was like dingy yellow. Come on now, you know your KB had that. And I'm sure it had this. A magic kit. Now this is, now you're saying, well, it's just a magic kit. But no, it was always the same thing. If you bought it in the 70s, if you bought it in the 80s, if you bought it in the 90s, if you bought it in the 2000s, it was always the same thing. It might come with a hat. It was a trick cards that had some label on the back so you could figure out what card it was. Marked cards, I should say. The stick. But it always comes with like the little plastic thing, you know, a little plastic container. You stick nails in. Maybe a thing you put your finger in. It looks like you cut your finger. A thing you put a quarter in, and it looks like, oh, no quarter. And you close it back. Oh, it is a quarter. And there was another little thing. It looked like a little vice thing. Remember that? It looked like a little vase. It looked like a little vase, and it had like half an egg in it. Remember that? That was always in it too. It's always the same toys in all these. And I don't care if 10 companies made this. It was always the same thing. Why was it always the same dang magic prizes? It was. Let's check in with that manager again and see. She thinks she's still standing around. Standing around looking sexy. That's what KB managers did, I guess. How about this right here? Another one I saw up by the checkout. The cow that goes moo when you turn it upside down. Remember those? You turn it upside down and they go moo. It's more like a dying cow than a real cow. Then you flip it back over on the right side. Moo. Remember that? Oh, man, I can remember that. The cow. I can't be the only one. Does anyone else remember the cow? I haven't seen these things in years. They don't make the cow anymore. I don't know why. It was guaranteed to get on the nerves of your parents on the way home in the back of the car. So would this right here. Remember this tube? It'll also have something in it to make a noise. You go, wah, wah, wah. Remember that? Oh, so annoying. So annoying. Oh, well, that's what KB did best. Annoying stuff like. Remember this? The ferret or rat or something on a ball. This is another thing to put in that little cage in the front. And it would just knock around those. You're like, oh, I got to get that. It looks fun. Why? Does it look fun? It looks fun for about 5 minutes when you get home. But remember this thing? It was all over KB. I know you've seen this thing. Bouncing back and forth and everything. Oh. But here's one. Here's one I know without a doubt you've seen this one. The Yapping Puppy. Usually it barked. It would also flip. It always flipped. Bloop, flip. And they always had like 5 or 6 of them out there, so it was really loud. You could hear the electronics inside of it. Oh, man. Flipping, flopping. You're like, oh. Let's check in with that manager one last time.
Is there a way to check it out on a regular Game Boy? No, we can't open it. There's no open ones?
Looking around, trying to look busy. How about this right here? The Penguin Staircase. I know without a doubt you had the Penguin Staircase at your KB. I know you did. Be honest, you had it. Oh, they would go up, boop, 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 and then shoo, back down to the bottom. I know you had it. Oh, it was another loud toy too, and you could hear the motor inside turning, but they would go up. Beep, 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 meow, beep, 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 meow. It was like a bunch of them too. I don't know anyone ever had this thing. I don't think they ever sold any of them. KB never sold a one, but they sure had a ton of them. Always right there when you first walk into KB Toys. But that does it. That's a look at some of the toys that you were guaranteed to see when you walked into a KB Toys. There was other things, like that plastic rack that sold sunglasses for kids. It was always, all the glasses were always falling off or broken. Of course, a rack of batteries. Yeah, but let me know some things you were probably guaranteed to see time you walked into a, not even before you walked in, just walking past it. All that loud noise and everything. But I tell you, I sure do miss KB Toys.
Hey, Junkman channel popping though.
Thank you, sir, for that unsolicited testimony.